They rejected me for my sister's boyfriend, then found out I'm his boss. Hi, I'm Nolan. I'm 30, and I live in a small town 40 minutes from Seattle. Every morning, I brew myself a cup of coffee, check the weather forecast, and head to my office, which is less than 10 meters from my house. I'm the co-founder of a small tech company in renewable energy. Not everyone understands what I do, not even my family. They still think I spend my days tightening screws and fixing machines, but that doesn't bother me. I've never felt the need to explain. Sometimes when someone asks about my family, my parents or my sister Melissa, I give a slight smile and say, "We haven't talked in a while." And I leave it at that. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because I don't see the point in rehashing it. I haven't been in touch with my family for over 2 years. No calls, no texts, no holidays, no birthdays, nothing. Just a long silence, like the thread between us snapped, and no one bothered to tie it back together. I used to believe family was everything. But 2 years ago, at my mom's birthday, everything changed. 2 years ago, 3 weeks before her birthday, I booked a plane ticket and took time off work. The plan was simple. Fly home early, stay a couple of days, and help with the preparations, like I did every year. Nothing special. I just wanted to give them a heads up. I called Mom, but Dad picked up after the second ring. "I'll be coming 2 days early," I said calmly. "If you need me to pick anything up or help, let me know." At first, he mumbled something vague, but then he hesitated, and when he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, heavier, like he was trying to hide something. "Nolan, if possible, it's better if you don't come home this year." I initially thought he was worried about my schedule. "It's fine, Dad," I said, still holding my warm coffee mug. "I've got it all sorted. It's not a problem." The pause stretched on, and then he spoke again, firmer, colder. "Melissa's bringing her boyfriend home this year. He's a manager, an important guy, speaks well, carries himself with dignity. Your job, it's embarrassing to even talk about. It's better if you don't come." At that moment, I felt heat rise from my neck to my face. My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively gripped the mug tighter. "What did you just say?" I snapped, no longer holding back my calm. "Are you seriously saying this to me right now?" He didn't back down, didn't soften, didn't take it back. Instead, he said it straight and sharp. "If you come home, you'll just embarrass the whole family. If you still decide to show up, don't call me your father." And without a pause, he hung up. I set the phone down, my hand trembling slightly, my palm sweaty. The apartment around me was completely silent. No TV, no footsteps. Just me, standing there, staring into the void in front of me, as if I'd been yanked out of my own life. His words echoed in my head, slow and clear, like a looped recording. "If you come home, you'll just embarrass the whole family. If you still decide to show up, don't call me your father." For a second, I wondered if I'd misheard. But no. Every word, every tone was cold as ice and hard as stone. There was no slip-up, no room for hope. I clenched my jaw, my throat tightening like something was stuck and wouldn't let go. Memories flooded in. I'd been quietly paying their bills. Electricity, water, internet. For over 2 years. No one ever mentioned it, and now they're calling me the family's shame. Right after that, I grabbed my phone, my hands still trembling slightly, though my mind was starting to go cold. I opened my banking app and scrolled through my transaction history. My only goal was to see exactly how much I'd spent on my family over the past 2 years. I needed hard numbers, electricity bill, water bill, internet, every month. Not a single miss. The payments were auto-deducted from my account, nearly $400 a month. Like clockwork, for 2 years straight. I slowly scrolled to the bottom. The total, 9,842 and 17ths. I stared at that number for a few more seconds, not because I was surprised, but because something in my chest suddenly settled. Not sadness, not anger, just emptiness. Almost $10,000. And now they're calling me the family's shame. As I looked at the long list of transactions, a quiet question surfaced in my mind. One that in 30 years no one in my family had ever asked. Had Melissa ever done for our parents even a fraction of what I had? This wasn't jealousy. I wasn't looking for praise. But if I'm the family's shame, by what standard are they measuring? I paid nearly $10,000 for their lives silently, asking for nothing in return, never bringing it up. And her? Had she ever had to sacrifice anything? Did she ever ask if they needed help? Or did she just show up, smile sweetly, and make an impression in a pretty dress with a successful guy on her arm? I didn't want to keep score. I was asking because for the first time, I realized fairness was never part of the equation in this family. I'd always been on the sidelines growing up. In family photos, I was usually half hidden behind someone or at the edge of the frame, not quite looking at the camera. No one asked me to step aside, but somehow I always did. All the big moments in the family revolved around Melissa. Birthdays, graduations, even her breakups. There was always a reason to rally around her, comfort her, praise her. And me? I can't even remember the last time someone asked if I was okay. Melissa's 2 years older than me, but the real gap between us was never about age. She was the hope, the child with a future, the one my parents bragged about when relatives came over. And me, in those same conversations, if I was mentioned at all, was a brief footnote. Nolan. Oh, he's fine. Doing something in tech, I guess. I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed out of trouble, and quietly took care of everything, they'd notice me one day. But that never happened. Turns out, when you're used to being invisible, no one notices when you disappear. I started paying my parents' utility bills, electricity, water, internet, almost 2 years ago. It began with a call from Mom. She complained that life had gotten expensive. The bills that month were unexpectedly high, and their pension couldn't keep up. Then, softly, with a hint of hesitation, she said, "If you could help out a little, it would mean a lot." I agreed. Back then, I thought it would just be for a couple of months until things settled down. But the months that followed were the same as the first. No one suggested stopping. No plan B was ever discussed. Sometimes I'd ask, "Mom, does Melissa ever help out?" She always dodged the question. Sometimes she'd say, "Help us this month, your sister will pitch in next time." Other times, "Your sister's handling Dad's medical bills. That's not easy either." I heard those lines so often I could recite them by heart. And every time I'd just smile and let it go, because deep down I knew none of it was true. So I kept sending the money. Nearly $400 a month, quietly, without complaint. No one mentioned it. Not that I minded. I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought if I was quiet and responsible enough, they'd notice. But today, after everything, they look at me and call me the family's shame. After a while, when everything around me quieted down, I just sat there, frozen on the couch, phone in hand. I wasn't even heartbroken anymore. The only clear feeling settling in my chest was something like, enough. Right after that, I opened my banking app, scrolled to the auto payments section where I'd set up the monthly transfers for my parents' bills. Electricity, water, internet. One by one, I opened each entry and canceled it without hesitation. I did it quietly, not for revenge, but to preserve the one thing I had left. A shred of self-respect. The one thing they couldn't take from me. About a week later, the first text came from Mom, the same soft tone she always used. Not a word about what happened, no apologies. Just, "I got a notice that the internet bill is overdue. Can you pay it?" I read the message, stared at the screen for a moment, and set the phone down without replying, not because I wanted to prove a point, but because after everything, the first thing they chose to say to me was another request. Pay the internet bill. Not, are you okay? Not even a simple, can we talk? So I stayed silent, and for me, that silence said everything that needed to be said. 2 weeks later, Dad called. The phone rang a few times and stopped. I didn't answer. A couple of minutes later, he left a voicemail. His tone was sharp, impatient, as always. The power company called. This month's bill isn't paid. What's going on? Still no hint of care, no acknowledgement of what he'd said that day I called to tell him I'd come for Mom's birthday. I listened to the voicemail, turned off the screen, and placed the phone face down on the table. And just as silently, I stayed quiet through Mom's actual birthday. About 3 weeks after Dad told me not to come home, Mom's birthday arrived. The party went on as usual. Her favorite fried chicken, the usual cake from her favorite bakery, and a few close relatives around the dining table. Everything was neatly planned and in its place, except for me. That day, at exactly 4 p.m., I was sitting in my living room with a long, cold cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. It was Mom calling. I stared at her name on the screen for a couple of seconds, then set the phone down. I didn't answer, didn't even consider it. A few minutes later, Dad called, then Melissa. 3 calls in less than 10 minutes. I ignored them all. No curiosity, no urge to respond. I stayed where I was, leaning back in my chair, staring at the foggy window. The sky outside was a dull gray. No rain, but cold with that quiet, creeping chill that signals winter's approach. About 10 minutes later, the texts started coming in. First was Mom. Nolan, the power's out. The whole house is dark. Please pay the bill. I picked up the phone and silently read her message. No anger, no surprise, just a quiet emptiness spreading in my chest, the kind that comes when you've spent years taking care of a family, and now you're the only one left carrying that burden. Then Dad. No water, can't cook, fix it now. Then Melissa. Internet's down, guests are here, fix it urgently. I glanced at the clock. 5:12 p.m. I clearly remembered canceling all the auto payments exactly 3 weeks ago, right after that evening when Dad said if I showed up, I shouldn't call him my father. And now, right in the middle of the birthday they didn't invite me to, everything was starting to shut off. Power, water, internet, each one disappearing right when they needed it most. I didn't respond with a text or a call. I didn't feel the need to explain. I just sat there, slowly turning the cold coffee mug in my hands, staring out the window as if I could see through everything in front of me. In that moment, I realized they weren't calling because they missed me, but because there was no one else to carry their burden. By 6 p.m., my phone started buzzing non-stop again. But it wasn't my parents or Melissa this time. It was relatives. The kind who only show up for holidays but somehow feel entitled to judge. The messages came in waves. One called me disrespectful. Another wrote straight up, "You've embarrassed your mother in front of the whole family." Another, more subtle but just as sharp. Melissa was right. People like you don't belong at a happy event. I read each message without bothering to reply. Not because my silence meant agreement, but because I'd long stopped justifying myself to people who always chose the loud crowd over what's right. I was about to put the phone down when the screen lit up again. It was Aunt Lauren, the one person in the family I still somewhat trusted. She was calling via video on an old app only she and I used, because we were the only ones who cared enough to look each other in the eye when it mattered. I hesitated for a second, then answered on the second ring. The first thing I saw was her face, slightly blurred by the yellow kitchen light behind her. I knew that kitchen like the back of my hand, every crack in the wall, every creaky cabinet. But today, the room felt different. In the background, I could hear the clink of cutlery, awkward laughter, and snippets of conversation. She looked at me through the screen, her eyes soft but worried. "You're not going to pay, are you, Nolan?" Her voice wasn't accusatory, just gentle, like she was trying to understand what was going on. I looked into her eyes, and when I finally spoke, my voice was slow, like I was pulling something long buried to the surface. "You know, Aunt Lauren, it was Dad who told me not to come." I swallowed. He said if I showed up, I shouldn't call him my father. She went quiet, her gaze shifting as if she was glancing around the room behind her. And then the call turned into chaos. I heard Mom's voice, now clearer, cutting through the noise. "Tell him I'm ashamed of him, especially on a day like this. How could he do this?" Then Dad, sharp and loud. "It's not that serious. Just pay a couple of bills. What kind of person nickel and dimes over money?" Another voice, maybe Uncle Dan's. Poor Melissa, having to deal with a brother like that. Footsteps approached the camera. Melissa appeared behind Aunt Lauren, arms crossed, lips twisted in irritation. He actually picked up. "Mom's been crying all day. Isn't he even ashamed?" I didn't say a word. I just watched, clinging to my silence like it was the only shield I had left. As I was about to end the call, another face appeared on the left side of the screen. A young guy with neatly combed hair, dressed in a dark suit. He looked at me. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Then he smiled uncertainly. "Hey, boss," he said. His voice was slightly rough, like he wasn't sure if the words were appropriate in that moment. I froze. My eyes locked onto the screen, and I gripped the phone a little tighter. I wasn't expecting this. Not here, not on the very night they all agreed I was too shameful to invite. I stared at him for a couple more seconds, and then it clicked. His face, his manner of speaking. Of course, he was one of the new hires, recently transferred from our southern branch. We'd exchanged a couple of emails. He'd sent me 2 reports, but I never knew he was Melissa's boyfriend, the very one they'd all gone to such lengths for. The room behind Aunt Lauren seemed to hold its breath. I saw her glance back, and suddenly the kitchen came alive with nervous movement. Someone whispered, "Wait, what did he call him? Another uncertain boss? Is that Nolan? Melissa's boyfriend's boss?" The whispers grew like a wave, overlapping each other. And I just watched the screen, not nodding, not denying, just waiting to see where this would go. Then the guy straightened up, looked past the camera at the others in the room, and said clearly, "In case you didn't know, I work at Pacific Territory. Mr. Nolan's one of the co-founders of the company." His words landed sharp and clear, loud enough to drown out the clatter of plates and the hum of voices. A strange silence fell over the room. Not awkward, but stunned. I still hadn't said a word, just pressed my lips together and gave a slight nod, quietly confirming. He turned back to the screen, his eyes widening a bit, and I said calmly, evenly, like the words had been waiting for their moment, "I hope your big show goes perfectly." And I hung up. That night I slept soundly. No tossing, no racing thoughts, no waking up in the dark with echoes of questions in my head. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not from satisfaction, but because they finally knew who I was. The next day, before the sunlight fully broke through the thin curtains, I grabbed my phone and checked my email, as always. A few meeting reminders, a couple of notes from accounting, and then I saw an unfamiliar name in the sender field. Hudson Kane. I opened the email. The first line hit immediately. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were Melissa's brother. I've always respected you at the company. I raised an eyebrow, propped myself up on the pillow, and kept reading. Hudson wrote that he was genuinely surprised to learn about the family connection between me and Melissa, and then, without mincing words, he said, I didn't expect her to be like this. I'm ending the relationship. Thank you for not putting me in an awkward spot in front of everyone. I set the phone on my chest and closed my eyes for a moment. A few minutes passed before I reopened the email and started typing a reply, slowly, clearly, without pretense. Hudson, that's your business. I don't expect anyone to make decisions to please me. Think carefully before you do anything. And for the record, I don't bring family to work. I hit send. No overthinking, no lingering emotions. For me, that was enough. Some things, once they become clear, don't require anything more. Around 10 a.m., as I was wrapping up a meeting with department heads and gathering my notes, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw the name. Melissa, my sister. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then declined the call. Not out of anger, not to prove a point. I was just tired of apologies that only come after everything falls apart. 5 minutes later, a text came through. I'm sorry, I didn't think Hudson would change like this. You're his boss. If you say something, he'll definitely listen. Talk to him. Ask him to come back to me. I walked over to the window in the hallway and leaned against the glass. I reread the message, then typed a reply. Not long, not short, just enough for her to understand. Hudson didn't leave because I told him to. He left because of how you live, how you treat people, how you look down on things you don't understand, and how you always think a soft voice can control anyone. I hit send, put the phone back in my pocket, and returned to my desk. But less than a minute later, another text came through. I know I messed up this time, really. I'll change, believe me, just this once. I didn't reply. I read it, sat with it for a moment, but nothing stirred inside me. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Sometimes the distance between people isn't in the apology, it's in when that apology comes. I quietly deleted the message, left nothing behind, and went back to the life that was still happening. A week later, on a Friday afternoon, as I came back home from the garage, I froze right on my porch. Standing at my front door were my parents, each with a small suitcase, their faces weary from the long flight. I didn't ask why they were there, because if they'd flown to me, it clearly wasn't just a courtesy visit. I opened the door and let them in. No tension, no forced politeness. I just decided I didn't want to have this conversation outside, where the wind was picking up along the porch. We sat in the living room, the tea on the table still steaming. Dad spoke first, apologizing in a tone calmer than usual. Mom added that they'd thought things over. Maybe they'd gone too far, and it shouldn't have come to this. I stayed silent, didn't interrupt, just listened to see if this was the end of something or the start of something else. And as I expected, Dad's tone shifted. We're family, Nolan, and family helps each other. We raised you, sent you to school. Everything you have now, part of that comes from us, right? I looked at him, my expression unchanged, but my posture straightened slightly. Then Mom spoke, her voice soft, like she was saying something completely reasonable. If you could send us about $2,000 a month, just a little support, it's not much for someone like you. I looked at the two people in my living room, the same ones who once excluded me from a family gathering because they thought I was a shame, and now they were sitting in my house, attaching a price tag to their apology. A specific price tag, $2,000 a month because I'm their son, and to them, my success wasn't mine. It was a debt I owed them. After their request, I let out a soft chuckle, not loud, not sarcastic, just gentle, the kind you let out when someone tells you a story that doesn't add up. I looked at my parents, their eyes locked on me, waiting, almost certain I'd nod in agreement. But I wasn't angry. I'd come too far for it to touch me. I leaned back in my chair, my voice steady and clear. What about Melissa? How much will she be contributing each month? The room seemed to freeze. The air thickened. Dad glanced at Mom, and she answered slowly, her voice lowering slightly. Your sister's job is still unstable, and the breakup with Hudson has been hard on her. I nodded slightly, unsurprised. The same old excuses wrapped in words that sounded sympathetic but only deflected. I looked up, straight at them, and replied, If she agrees to support you with $2,000 a month, I'll do the same. No more, no less. They sat there, staring at me, as if trying to figure out if I was serious. I continued calmly. Or if you want me to take it all on, I'll need something in writing. A legal agreement stating that after you pass, the house goes entirely to me. I sat still, no pressure, no extra explanations, just waiting to see how they'd respond now that, for the first time, I was setting terms for what they'd always seen as my duty. The moment I finished speaking, the room sank into a heavy, thick silence. Suddenly, Dad jumped to his feet, slamming his palm on the wooden table, causing the teacup to tip over and its contents to spill over the edge. His voice boomed through the room, his chest heaving with rage. You're putting conditions on your own parents? We raised you for over 20 years, and now you want to haggle with us like we're at a market? What kind of life are you even living? He shouted so loudly I wouldn't be surprised if the neighbors heard every word. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just sat there, hands on the armrests of my chair, my eyes fixed on him. Not cold, but no longer soft. I waited until he was done, then slowly stood up. My voice was quiet and steady, but clear enough to cut through the storm he'd just unleashed. I think it's time for both of you to leave my house. It wasn't a threat, wasn't said in anger, just a request from someone who'd reached the limit of what respect could offer. No one said another word, just the sound of suitcases dragging across the wooden floor and the click of the door closing behind them, quieter than everything they left behind inside me. It's been 2 years since I last saw them here, in my house. I didn't block their numbers, didn't change my email, didn't cut them off completely. I just stopped reaching out. And I waited to see if I'd still be part of the family when I stopped being a shadow of duty and obligation. In those 2 years, not a single call, not a single text asking how I'm doing, no mention of birthdays, health, or a simple, "How are you?" I used to believe they'd change one day, but now I understand. Not everyone changes, especially those who never thought they were wrong. I still live here. Work, keep going. The only difference is I no longer let myself be an emotional ATM, ready to give, ready to hurt, all in the name of duty. And if I've taken anything from all of this, it's this. Family isn't a place where they demand your kindness and call it love. Real family is where they see you as a person, regardless of what you can offer. Not as a wallet, not a backup plan, not a last resort when everything falls apart. And before I close this chapter, I want to ask you something. Was I wrong for choosing not to go back, for refusing to support my parents with $2,000 a month, even though they're older now, even though they raised me? I used to believe family could heal everything, but after being treated like a stranger in my own home over and over, I decided to step out of that cycle. Was I too cold, or did I finally learn to love myself at the right time? Leave your thoughts below. I really want to hear from you. Do you agree, or do you see it differently? If this story meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support it. There are more stories ahead, waiting to be told and heard. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking around until the end.